go. Oh,
Yeah.
I thought that was Lynn speaking then. Sorry.
You haven't given us permission, though.
I think it's probably a completely different accent. Sorry if it was. Right. I haven't given you permission.
No.
But do I have to do this?
I don't know how you do it, but
I have it on the screen where it is asking me if I would give permission. And
thank you, Douglas. Okay, so it looks as though it's up to you.
Yes, got it.
We have a message that says you are recording.
Oh, good. Right. Well, so
screen.
far it's going to be absolutely riveting watching, isn't it? What button do you press? I don't really know anything apart from bridge, you know.
well,
Right.
you know,
Let's share the screen and let's make a start. At last. Off we go. And if you wouldn't mind muting yourselves, please, because we've got about 17 or 18 people here. Okay, results then last week. Yesterday. And of course, they're both the same because it was combined. Convincing win for Caroline and Keith. And good result from Naomi there and Brian as well. So that's great. And I think, you know, some of the people in Group 1 should take heart from the fact that Zoe and Tony went up. They've hardly struggled, have they? So good. As for East-West, I looked at those 9 pairs, you know, and only 6 of them at most are actually bona fide Group 1. There were 3 Group 2 interlopers. So, Anne, well done on your result there. That's very, very good. And so we go down the list. Okay, so that's that. If you ever want to know how we work the results out, we're very happy to tell you. We could actually do with a reserve score, actually, because it does take quite a long time. And Roy, shall we put up averages? Can't hear me, never mind. I'll ask him next time I see him. Okay. Now, just to run over last week's lesson, this was just, if you weren't here, it was opener's first bid. And this is one of these gadgets where you can deal yourself various hands. And I did that to work through just about every bid we could think of. Now, a couple of people said to me, how do I find help on this? It's here. See where it's the question marks there? This is all online now. I put it online the day I do it. So if you want to know about balanced hands, probably one of the first charts you ever saw, wasn't it? If you want to know about, this is just opener's first bid, unbalanced hands. And as always with bridge, a few exceptions down at the bottom, and finally preemptive hands. So even if you miss the meeting, somebody told me he just started bridge and he went to a bridge club and the person opened 5 clubs straight away. That must have been quite off-putting, mustn't it? Presumably he had a good 9-card suit. Right. What else was there? There are some exceptional hands here. For example, in the unbalanced category, there's things like the rule of 20 and the rule of 15. Now that was last week. Just see, are there any comments or questions about that first session we had?
Oh.
Okay. That's almost a 2-diamond opener, isn't it?
Yeah.
Possibly in third seat. Do you know what I mean by third seat? Well, your partner's passed, the right-hand opponent has passed, and it's your turn to bid. That's why you're called third seat. And especially if you're not vulnerable, now's the time to be bold. And I think in third seat, not vulnerable, although it doesn't quite qualify, I think 2 diamonds will be a really annoying bid for our left-hand opponent. Okay, so no questions on last week's work. Good. Now, we move on now to a part of the game we've looked at several times before, and you'll hear me repeating certain things. Basic defense. Couldn't resist that, sorry. play bridge, and I have to say, really with a regular partner, the more you enjoy defence. It is the most difficult part of the game. Well, parts of it are, for the simple reason, of course, you can't see your partner's cards. Jonathan's just coming in to join us. Just let him in. And to be honest, we haven't really ever got very far with defence. And I hope we're going to rectify that because, as I say, we've only really just scratched the surface. So every card matters. That's the first lesson of defence. Now, please, as each page finishes, don't hesitate to stop me. I feel last week I rattled on a bit too quickly at times. So don't hesitate to stop me if you're not clear about anything, especially if you're in group one. So now, you know, I often obviously direct and wander around the groups, and I can't resist looking at hands sometimes. And time again, and I don't mean just group one, I see people misleading, you know. Of course, I don't say anything, you know, it's group two, but what is the job of an ace? That's the first question.
Take a king.
Kill the king.
Can we just let group one possibly, and sorry to sound a bit sharp there, can we just let group one have a go? Because, you know, I think relative beginners think the job of an ace is to just win tricks. And of course, it's brilliant at that. And beginners just play off their aces and think, oh, good, that'll win a trick. But in fact, if you actually lead an ace, you just gather up 2, 3s, 4s, 5s, and it doesn't gain you anything. So I think one of the first lessons of defense is if you have an ace in your hand, yes, you're pleased, but am I going to use this card wisely? So, for example, if you lead an ace and you haven't got the king, have you got any chance of capturing the king? Well, minimal. Your only hope is a singleton. So generally speaking, it's a bad idea to lead an ace without the king. It doesn't really pay for itself in that way. You'd rather win it in some different way. Now, it's a very different matter if you've got the king as well, because the lead of the ace from the ace king is often recognized as the best lead in breach.
You didn't hear.
Right, okay.
You're right there, Jonathan.
Is that Will?
Will phoned, yes, he's coming.
Jonathan, hello, we can hear your conversation.
Right, okay.
Sorry. Hello, Jonathan. Hello, Jonathan. Oh, okay. Well, we'll carry on. Okay, and I think you can probably guess the best job a king can do. Group one.
Kill the queen?
Exactly. I thought of putting the word kill, but it's a bit crude, but I know what you mean. Indeed. And so on to the list of these high cards. The best job a queen can do is kill a jack, or used to be called knaves when I first started playing. It seems to be always jack now. And the best job a jack can do is capture the 10. We like T's rather than 10s because it looks like one character. And down to the lowest of the honours, capture the 9. Okay, so we bear that in mind. We're always pleased to have these high cards, but we want them to pull their full weight by capturing the card below. I mean, of course, it's fine if the ace captures a queen. That's pretty good, isn't it? Or the king captures a jack. That's pretty good. But their best achievement is on this list. Okay. Suppose that's fairly self-evident. Now, what about the other cards? And this is why this section is called Every Card Matters. I think most of us knew what was on this screen pretty well. But what is the job of a high spot card? Now, I think they're called spot cards because they have spots on rather than pictures. And we rate 6, 7, 8, and 9 as high. Now, you've easily, I'm sure, managed to know what the job of those high honours were, but what's the job of a high spot card? Can anybody think of one? Or are they just completely unimportant, boring cards?
What do you mean by a spot card?
Well, as I just said, a spot card is a card that's not got a picture on it.
Oh, I see.
Well, actually, that's not quite true because the 10 and the ace are honours. It's a card that's not an honour. And I think it's called a spot card because on the card itself, there's a pattern of what look like spots. I think that's the reason for it. Anyway, it means any card below a 10 that's not an honour.
To give a signal?
Signal to.
That's what I want to hear. Yes, to give a signal. And when you lead a high card, it means you haven't got any points in the suit. Okay. Now, don't forget, from now on, some of this may be new to you. Don't hesitate. And that's why I put high equals hate. To discourage when hearts are led. Now, I think I will be thinking, well, why lead it in the first place? Well, if we have time later, we'll be showing how some leads are very risky. It's a disadvantage having the lead in bridge. You can often give tricks away. It's the worst position to be in. And the merit of leading a spot card is that you just don't give anything away. You don't throw away a high card in some way. So I think most of us know that when you lead high, you're saying this is a poor suit. Okay, I'm leading it because I've got nothing better to do, or maybe I'm leading it because you bid it, which is the best reason of all, isn't it? Now, the rest of this is where we've perhaps not even been involved before. So I'm just going to run through it without fully explaining it. What other things, we've said that every card matters. So let's have a look at the 5 jobs of spot cards. We know one, I think we all know that by now, high for hate. Now, when you first throw a card away, because you can't follow suit, that always gives a message. Very important. Do you know that? That your first discard, in other words, you can't follow suit, shows a message about that suit. Now, there are 2 different systems on this. I'm going to stick to the one that's simplest, where high equals hate applies all the way through for these spot cards. High being 6, 7, 8 or 9, but the 9 is the best at the job because it's obviously high, isn't it? Whereas the 6 is a little bit ambiguous. So the first time you throw away, if you throw away, 7, 8, 9, that kind of thing, it's saying, I don't like this suit. And generally speaking, it is best to throw away from a suit that you don't like. You don't tend to spoil the suit by unguarding it. So 1 or 2 of you in group 2 perhaps know about discard signals. Do any of you use them yet?
No.
Right. Now, really, if you're playing with a regular partner, when I talk about discards, I only mean the first one. The first time you can't follow suit, that first discard sends that message. And if I say, play the 8 of hearts, I'll be saying, I don't like this suit, lead something else. And that's the most common discard because you don't want to unguard your kings or your queens or your jacks. If you don't know what unguard means, it means that you should keep little cards with big ones to stop them being just taken. I mean, the simplest example, if you've got a king doubleton, you don't want to get rid of the little card that goes with it, do you? Because your king might get the chop as a singleton. Okay. So that's interesting. It does really show, as a group, I'm finding the group 1 standard is improving week by week. I'm not sure about group 2 because I'm not usually there. But this is an area where we could really improve our bridge. All right. So you happy about first discard? Joe?
Chris, you have to accept that if you're going to use that method,
the opponents can read that as lead the suit because you don't like it.
Absolutely. And every signal in bridge is a very good point Joe's just made. Every signal in bridge, not only does it give your partner information, it gives declarer information. Now, what's the answer to that question? The answer is, who's most in the dark? Not Caroline Huddy, I mean, sorry, at the bridge table. Who's most in the dark at the bridge table? It's the defenders, isn't it? So on the whole, Joe, the fact that the defenders can exchange information is well worth the very small price of their knowledge. But you're quite right. Yeah. Okay. I mean, the benefits do outweigh the disadvantage by a huge amount. Now, of course, you'll have to take my word for that if you're not currently using those. Okay.
Chris, can I just ask a question?
Sorry, while I've got you on, do you and Ron use discards signals?
We try to, but not very well. But the question I had was also, if you lead high and then your next card is low, isn't that supposed to signal a doubleton?
Doesn't it? Yeah, it does, and we'll come to that a bit later in the lesson. Indeed, yeah. Christopher's question was that if you've got two cards in a suit, a doubleton, or not question as much as making a point, that you lead the higher of the two. And in a while, we'll be going over all these little lead rules, but that's quite right. Higher card of a doubleton. Okay. So a high spot card very often is the higher card of a doubleton, but not necessarily always. Okay. Now let's just stop there because this is obviously a new idea to the vast majority. Now, you can reverse the system and have it the other way around. There's no reason at all. From a teaching point of view, and as you know, I've been watching a professional teach recently. He thinks that it's best to stick to the same thing all the way through. That high in general means I don't like it. Okay. It's a fairly modern idea, this. It's called reverse attitude. So that's your first discard. I should emphasize, by the way, it's only the first discard. Later on, you just can't afford to keep giving signals like this. There is another signal we know, of course, or group 2 know, that when your partner leads a high heart, you playing one of these high spot cards would be saying, I've got nothing to help you, partner. Okay.
I thought it was the opposite, actually.
Yeah, and I do apologise, Anne. I've been influenced by Ipswich.
Ipswich.
Yeah. I spent £11 watching my football team Derby lose at Ipswich on the television the other night, so I'm not very pro Ipswich at the moment. They're a good side. No, it has been changed, I'm afraid, because I think it's simpler for people to learn. Now, if you're playing the opposite, it doesn't matter at all. So the main thing is you're both on the same wavelength.
Uh-huh.
And it's just easier from teaching point of view. Okay.
Oh, right.
If your partner led the King of Hearts, now that promises the Queen, doesn't it? It should do.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you've got the Ace or the Jack to make up a nice little sequence, you would throw a low card, low for like. And in this system, where everything's the same, high for hate, you do the opposite if you hadn't got the Jack or the Ace. Do you see what I mean? But we're going to go into more details about these mysterious things in a later defense lesson. So if it's a bit foggy now, don't worry. I'm just trying to get over this business where, there is a habit, what's the most common thing I hear when I'm standing in the hall? Oh, no, I haven't got many points again, blah, blah, blah. Well, first of all, you're only compared with people with the same number of points as you. And I think what an opportunity to practice your defensive signals. Of course, if you don't know them, that's not much of a consolation, but there we are. Now, this is completely new. You can show preference for one suit or another. It's another job. Not going to go into that now. It's looking ahead of ourselves. And finally, you can show the count of the number of cards in the suit. Now, if you don't understand those 5 jobs of the spot cards at the moment, we'll be going into detail in a few weeks' time when we next start looking at defense again. Any questions about that screen? Remember, some of it will be a mystery because all 5 of those jobs, look how many jobs these small cards have, will be dealt with in detail in a few weeks' time. Okay. Moving on. Don't forget to interrupt if you're not sure. And the minnows. Now, I suppose logically, if you've been listening like good boys and girls, you should tell me the 5 jobs they can do. Shall we open this up to group 2 as well?
The low is like when it's led.
Yes. Okay.
When
you
the
lead,
card is led, you and you like it, you respond with a low,
and,
or you
that-
you encourage with a low. No, that's a new one to me now.
yeah, low equals like, same thing. Yeah.
Mm.
And that's not reversed, by the way. That's always been the case, hasn't it? A low means like him on the lead.
Oh yeah.
All
on
right.
the lead,
Well,
yeah.
I did say these other things were new to most of us. You play low on your first discard if you liked hearts. By the way, it doesn't just hearts. I hope nobody thinks it's just hearts. It's any suit. Hearts is just a random suit. And there's the list again in reverse. Okay. And this is when bridge really starts to get fascinating, when you start going into all the realms of signaling. And indeed, every card does matter. Good. Okay. Of course, some matter more than others. I mean, what's the best card for encouraging a suit?
2.
2, because it's unambiguously low, isn't it? What's the best card for discouraging a suit?
9.
This is more like it, a 9. And sometimes you haven't got the right cards at all. I'm surprised nobody's asked what happens if you don't have the right cards. Well, your partner has such a high IQ that they can see the situation by looking at dummy and deduce what difficulties you're in. That's the theory anyway. I did say defense wasn't easy. Right, on we go. Now that's the end of that page. Don't try going back on this yet because it gets in a muddle. Look, doesn't like it, does it? No, okay. Right. Okay. This reminds me of old days in Fred Reynolds Centre when I was first there doing this animation. The card to lead. Now, what do you think is the most important moment in a deal on average? I think you've got a big blue clue on the screen, haven't you?
Card
Well,
that's red.
The opening lead. The bidding is finished and declarer's left-hand opponent decides what of 13 cards to lead. Now, that is by some way the most important or crucial moment in a deal. I would imagine most of you think that bidding is, well, of course, bidding is important, but it is the point where most, if I look at the differences between your scores, have you ever noticed a column called lead?
Mm.
Now, I don't think we really have time to put those in on Tuesday mornings, but you will usually, well, you will often find that the lead has made all the difference to whether people have won tricks or not. And there it is. I don't think we'll get into the habit of putting leads down because it's just a bit fiddly, unless there's a huge demand for it. I just use that for East to tick North's effort at scoring. Right, well, the first rule is if you lead an honour, it promises the card below it. And yet I go round the room and I don't say anything, and I look at people at the table and I can see a suit with an honor at the top and they just lead it, you know. So there's king and two others who just lead the king. And this is group two, you know. So the lead of an honor, now we're talking about opening leads here, but it does rather apply throughout the whole hand. So if you lead a king, for example, you are promising the queen and denying the ace. Old stuff for most of you. Another little thing is in no trumps, if you are going to lead honor, not only have you got the one below, you've got another one as well, because you tend to give tricks away if you don't. Now, against no trumps, then you should have 3 high cards. So, for example, if you had the ace and the king and the jack, that will be fine to lead the ace because it's a high card. If you have the jack, the 10 and the ace, it will be fine to lead the jack because that's 3 high cards. But if you had only the king and queen, well, that will be fine against trumps, but against no trumps, you should have something else to go with it, something like an ace or a jack or a 10. Okay, so a slight difference there when we're leading. Most leads, the majority of leads are the same against trumps or no trumps, but there are some exceptions, and that's one of them. A high spot card. Now, I think 5s and 6s are a bit ambiguous. They're a bit in the middle. So the higher, the better, would, as we have just discovered, tend to show discouragement. Now, the modern treatment is no high cards points in the suit. So our 10 has got a little bit demoted in modern leads. It's a very simple thing. If you lead a 9, 8 or 7, you've got no points in the suit. Why should you leave it? Well, especially against trump contracts, it doesn't give anything away. And the other reason, the best reason of all, is of course your partners bid the suit, and that's always top of any opening lead list, or should be. That's why your overcalls should be based on suits of good quality, because partners probably going to lead them, especially if you haven't got many points. And the reverse, excuse me, if you lead a low card, you are saying, I have got points in this suit, at least a jack. Okay. Most of you have seen these 3 before. Christopher said earlier, you lead the higher card from a doubleton. Now, of course, all these things we learn have just stop there, see if there's any questions, because the 4 lead rules are new to 2 or 3 of you here tonight.
And Chris, just one more thought. Where does the middle up down rule come in? If you've got 3 spot cards, do you do
Yes.
middle up down?
Yes, I do. And that if we got time when we come to the quiz bit, I'm going to differentiate that. Now, I will answer your question, but don't worry, the rest of you, if you're not quite with it, mud leads, middle up, down. Now, supposing you decided to lead a suit, okay, and you had the 9, the 8, and the 2, okay, you could lead the 9 or the 8, couldn't you? The best card, though, would to be lead the 8, because when you play the 9 the next time, it's clear it wasn't a doubleton, and that's called a mud lead. Is that all right, Christopher? Now, 9, 8, 2 is one thing, and
Yes.
I would lead the 8 from 9, 8, 2. But what if you got 9, 3, 2? That's awkward, isn't it? Now, I freely admit I get my ideas from 2 excellent teachers, Andrew Robson, and in a very different style, Bernard McGee, especially for group 1 type people. And the thinking is that with 9, 3, 2, it's more important to lead the 9 to get a clear idea that you've got no points in the suit, rather than stick rigidly to middle up, down. That will come later. Does that answer your question?
Yes, Chris, that's great. Thank you.
It's more important you describe the quality of your suit rather than the exact number of cards, because it's more useful information. So that's the modern thinking. I mean, things evolve in bridge. It's surprising. It's been played for over 100 years, but things still evolve. Now, of course, the exceptions. Oh dear, I could scream if I were of that temperament. When I walk around the room and I see somebody, and I don't tart or swear under my breath. Somebody's got, you know, the ace. They've got a suit with the ace and two small ones, okay? And they lead the small one. And I always look, what's the contract? You don't, please. That's why I put it in this horrible red colour. Don't underlead aces. Don't lead a small card when you've got an ace against trumps. Why? Because so often the suit turns out to be something like a singleton. And your ace has gone to bed, to use bridge 10. In other words, it's wasted. So I keep seeing it. I wonder if we could have a Christmas forfeit for the next person I see to underlead an ace against a trump contract. Okay, if you do have to lead the suit, by the way, if you do want to lead it, you play the ace regardless. Now, why should that be? Well, you might have 4 aces in your hand, which makes it difficult, or much more likely, your partner's bid the suit. Okay.
But Chris, doesn't that give the signal that you've got the king?
Exactly. And that's what makes bridge difficult, doesn't it? So there's always these horrid exceptions, isn't there, right at the end? So it's another reason, Joe, and another good point from you, it's another reason to try not to lead them unless you have to, okay? The lead of an ace by itself is not a good lead. It's well down the list. But sometimes there's no better alternative because, as you say quite rightly, it gives partly the impression you've got the king. But the vast majority of the time, of course, you'll be able to stick to the 4 lead rules. Now, that chart is, I thought when I first learnt it, one of the most important things I learnt in bridge. Another really important was the list of 5 priorities on opener's second bid. It suddenly made everything crystal clear. I suppose actually it's really 6 lead rules, isn't it? Because if you look, you've got the 3 high cards against no trumps and the ace exception, but the basic idea is 4. So I'm not going to leave that screen just in case anybody feels they're not clear about any of that. Don't forget, this is the most important point in a deal very often. It's more important than whether you bid 3 hearts or 4 hearts in the auction. Most teachers teach far too much, by the way, about bidding, in my opinion, and not enough about defence in particular. And declarer play, of course, is obviously important, but you defend twice as often as you are declarer. Unless you're one of these people who tries to bid to avoid doing the washing up after 11 o'clock, but there we are. Okay. On we go then. So we'll go through this fairly quickly. This is a random quiz. All you've got to do, just shout out what you think as soon as you see it. What would you lead from this suit? Now, there are 2 questions, no trumps or trumps. What would you lead?
I wouldn't.
Is anybody there? You wouldn't, but you've got to because partner bid the suit, and that's top priority. Let's put it that way.
3.
Don't be shy.
Really?
3, yes.
You need a
You've got
3.
points in the suit. You haven't got an on the sequence, and most of these will be the same for both answers. An exception may come up. Okay. Ready? I like it. I've got points in the suit. Now, admittedly, somebody said just then, I wouldn't lead it. No, it is generally a poor lead. But if your partner bid the suit, that's what you'd lead. Okay. This is quite random, by the way. It could be anything. That's an awkward one. Don't be shy.
6.
You've got, yes, Anne's not shy. Yeah, you got a 1 in 3 chance. I absolutely agree. It is a bit awkward. Oh
We
dear.
should have said 4.
No, you're right. The computer's wrong because this is my out of date bit of programming. There are no high card points in the suit. That should say 6. Now, I know it's changed. I think 6 is better because do you really like that suit? Do you really want to encourage it? No, I'd go for the 6. Unfortunately, the 6 is a bit ambiguous itself. It's the best you can do. I agree with that, the 6. This is now online. It's completely random. You can try it yourself, see how many you get right. Don't forget, the modern thinking is that you encourage with points in the suit. So that he's got that one wrong. It's only a machine.
2.
That's good. Definitely the 2. And it doesn't matter, does it? Because you're just showing points in the suit. I would classify that as a slightly risky lead. Anybody know why? Well, what are kings meant to do? Kill queens. Now, of course, if the queen is on your right, you've just blown it, haven't you? Because declarer, if they played the suit themselves, would lead up to the queen and lose to your king, taking a 50% chance. So it is a risk. But at no trumps, you still tend to lead your longest suit anyway, because you're just interested in building up length winners. The other reason, as always, is that partner may have bid the suit. Not in general great suits to lead from. Single honours. You know, when you lead from a suit like this, can you see that pointer going across, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah. When you lead from a suit like this, think, why am I leading it? Because you've got the risk of losing unnecessarily to the queen. If the queen was down here with declarer, you see, they might be finessing it and lose. So, you know, you think twice a bit about a lead from a single honour. Okay. I need 2 answers, please.
The 3 in no trumps and the ace in trumps.
Who was that?
Me.
At tonight's CDM. Oh, sorry, are you too young to Cadbury's Dairy Milk, CDM? Is that your wine rack behind you, by the way? I know I'm being nosy.
No, it's a glass panel in the wall.
Oh, it soon can play tricks. It looks like a huge wine rack. Very good answer, if I may say so. Against no trumps, you would lead the 3. Indeed. But against trumps, you must always lead the ace if you have it. Now, by the rather quiet atmosphere, I'm guessing this is a bit of news to some of you. I don't know. Maybe it's just natural modesty and finding the lesson far too easy. Good, correct. Ooh. Random suits. There's nothing less than a doubleton, by the way, because there's obviously not going to be a single.
9.
Don't agree, Roy, I'm afraid. I see why you've said 9, because you're trying to discourage the suit. Is that right? 9 would discourage the suit, but there is a rule above that supersedes it.
The 10, because it's followed by the 9 and the 8.
Now, bridge has been played for over 100 years. And incidentally, if you watch some stupid TV serials now, they have people playing bridge, you know, in Jane Austen or something like that. It's absolute rubbish. I don't know how they can do that. What they did play was whist, though. And whist has been going for 200-300 years. And it's been known even since the days of whist that the 10 is a high enough card to lead if you have a sequence. So, in fact, whatever, I would choose the 10. It is an honour, and if you got the card below, then that will suit. So a tough one there. It did look like a bit of a 9. I can see why you said 9 there, or even 8. but I think the 10 is just high enough, especially with a straight sequence. See, if he goes 10, Jack, Queen, King, and then the ace goes, your eight's a winner straight away. So that little sequence is not necessarily quite worth. It's always quite good in a suit, by the way, when you've got a sequence of cards.
But
Well-
could you not argue then the 2 because you like the suit? There is an honor in it.
I think it's just good enough to risk giving away a cheap trick. Now, I give these answers. These are answers that have accumulated for almost centuries of card play. And, you know, rules like this, you'll find even in old huge, they used to play duplicate whist, which must have been a horrifying game because neither player could see his partner's hand. And there's an immense book called According to Hoyle or something. So these rules are the distillation of years of knowledge. And of course, modern computer programs can quite demonstrate that a lead of a 2 here is a little bit too likely to give away a cheap trick. But it's a fine line. There's no certainties in opening leads, of course. And people don't seem to write bridge books anymore, do they? I haven't seen one this year. There are actually whole books written on opening leads, believe it or not. It's a big subject. Okay. And sometimes you'll break the rules, but that's really difficult. Oh, here's a good one. I need 2 answers, please.
The Queen.
I need 2 answers, please.
5.
2.
I've got 2 answers for 2 different people.
Yeah.
5 against no Trump
they're
and the
both-
Queen against Trump.
Thank you, Anne. Another CDM's award this evening.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's 2 honours, yeah. Oh, I can't hear you.
2 honours. Honour is a high card. Yeah, indeed. Okay, so I'm glad that's come up because that's a really crucial difference, isn't it? You know, the trouble with leading low against trumps, they often don't go round for more than 2 or 3 rounds. So you don't tend to want to risk the 5 against trumps because you don't have as many rounds of tricks in the suit. Whereas in no trumps, you tend to want to keep the higher cards in your own hand to cash your hope for length winner at the end. The 7 that would be, wouldn't it? Just stopping there. Can you see why there are 2 different answers in this particular case?
Yep.
Because of this promise of the 3 high cards. Good. Okay. And that will be 4 either way. And just see if we've got time for the next section. So we just finished the card lead. Now, we'll finish, I think, with this bit tonight. Earlier in this session, I mentioned the idea that some leads were risky and some leads were safe. And at the risk of repeating myself, and this might be a question more for group 2, if you lead the ace, you know, my bête noire, what might happen? I'd like a description in 20 words or so. No, 10 words. So why is it your Zoommeister doesn't like leading an ace there?
You just get 3 small cards on it.
And, you know, you don't know what the other cards are here, of course, but this is the scenario where it's risky. You just get 3 small cards on it. That was Sheila, I think, wasn't it? Thank you.
Yes.
Good. Your family is doing well tonight. I put little red ticks, you know.
Sorry, but the other point about leading
I'll
the
give you an extra biscuit at Christmas. Sorry?
the other point about leading the ace, although you know you'll win it, all you're doing is postponing the difficult decision to the next round, and it clearly is not really very good suit to lead anyway.
That's the idea, Catherine. Yes. I mean, really, you're just making life easy for declare, aren't you? Because if declarer had to play this suit, either on the first or second round, they'd have to finesse the king. You know, when you've got the king and queen opposite, it's hopeless, because if one finesse wins, you know, suppose declarer led the 5 up to the queen and you played low, as you should do. Yeah, fine. But when, you know, you can't repeat the finesse the same way. So coming backwards, we've got dummy leading up to the king, which will lose, you see. And you've just presented, as you say, you've just presented declarer with 2 tricks they don't deserve. This isn't a lesson on declarer play, but if you are declarer, you know, I always say take a while to just look at dummy, and don't be rushed by your opponents. Don't play suits like this. If you've got single honors in both hands, just don't play them. I don't know if you remember, I gave them a name. They're called frozen suits. They're not to be touched, because the moment you do play them, you just help the defense, really. You just want them to lead. And of course, from your point of view, what you really want is partner to lead the suit with their lovely Jack 10-9 sequence. And that will trap the king. The king will be trapped, wouldn't it, between the Jack and the ace? And that would restrict dummy to just the one trick, the queen. Incidentally, it would be the same if the king and the queen were the other way round, of course. You could say capturing the queen is obviously equivalent. Now, last time we did this, which is quite a while ago, there was I got this feeling of people not really being able to follow it. So please do say if it's a bit of a mystery to you. So that would be a very poor lead if, you know, sometimes you get lucky, of course, and partner's got the king and the queen. But how likely is that? There's a 1 in 9 chance, even if you had an equal number of. No, bad idea in general. Right, now, what would happen if you underled? Now that means you had a high card, but you lead a low one instead. Well, this might happen. And this is the cardinal sin at the bridge table, where I've heard normally very genteel people go quite berserk when their partners underled an ace in a suit contract. Has it ever happened to you? No, not with the kind of experienced partners you have, I'm sure. But you go and lead a 2, say, or 6 or 8, it doesn't matter. And so often in the suit you led, you know, the reason declarers declare is because they've often got singletons, which are sort of worth extra. And the biggest nightmare scenario, of course, this is a trump contract. It doesn't matter what the suit is, put no suit symbols, it doesn't matter. But you risk that awful experience. And I have played against quite experienced people when I used to play at Leon C, who just underled aces like this. And I've got a king singleton in my hand, think it was worthless. And lo and behold, it is just won a trick. Now, of course, you don't always get that lucky, and that's why we call it a risky lead. Okay. Whereas if partner led the suit, it would capture the king. It would be better for partner to lead that. So that will be even worse than leading the ace itself. Actually, on this occasion, it'd be better to lead. So if you are going to lead this suit, you lead the ace itself, which would be better, because on this occasion, you'd have the rare stroke of luck of it capturing the king. A question in a similar vein here. If you led the 2 in this suit, it doesn't matter what the suit is. What kind of risk do you run here? Why do I term these things underleading, single high honors, risky leads? What can you envisage a scenario why it's not a very good idea in general? Tell Keith isn't here tonight.
the risk of a group 2 answer, isn't it? You're exposing your king to a finesse.
Indeed. Indeed. That's exactly what you're doing. If we just think of what we was talking about earlier, that the king's job is to beat the queen, you've just given it no chance. Of course, there may be good reasons for leading this suit. The usual one, that partners signaled it or bid it, and this might be the scenario. And that's exactly what you said, Christopher, wasn't it? If Declarer had played this himself or herself, the natural play that you will be taught will be to finesse. On this occasion, that would lose to the king. But you've just given Declarer an extra trick. It's exposed to a finesse, because sometimes it doesn't happen. That's why it's called risky. It's not certain disaster. And of course, if partners bid the suit, there's far less chance of that actually happening there. Okay. Now, we're now coming almost to the next section. I'm going to stop in a minute because it's starting to talk about what priority suits. So we've done quite well already. To finish though tonight, I did last week put up a new convention which I asked Ron and Keith about. Now, they disagreed. Now, I won't tell you who said what, those senior members of our club. Ron isn't, neither of whom are here at the moment. Now, people often ask me in group one, they're delighted partners picked up such a strong hand and has bid 2 clubs, but haven't much idea what to do about it. Now, the cop-out is just to bid 2 diamonds and wait and see. As you know, it's just a waiting bid. I like this a lot, this idea. One of Chris, Ron and Keith didn't, and the other was quite interested. Let's put it as stronger than that. Now, instead of just bidding 2 diamonds, the idea behind this is called showing controls, is that you show, instead of just bidding 2 diamonds, you show how many aces and kings you've got. And to me, that seems really useful. Now, if you count an ace as 2 controls, as they're called, and a king as 1, this is advanced stuff, by the way, so switch off if you don't want it. And there's the table. So if you've either got none or 1, you bid 2 diamonds, which is probably the most common scenario. If you've got 2, you bid 2 hearts. If you've got 3, can you see the pattern? Now, it doesn't often go above 3 clubs. So an ace is 2 controls and a king is 1. So in the hand we've got below, how many controls have you got?
3.
3. Yes, ace is 2. So that's quite a decent hand considering partners open with, 23. Should partner have opened 2 clubs, by the way? Ooh. I'd say that was about the poorest 2 club. I mean, it is a 5-card major. Almost. Is it 20?
22, isn't it?
22.
A bit tempted to open 2 no trumps on that. Anyway, partner has bid 2 clubs and he's planning to bid 2 spades afterwards, of course. So we show our 3 controls. And from this, partner can deduce that we must have an ace and the king. We can't have both aces, can we? So it almost supersedes Blackwood's in some cases. So when we see 2 spades, we think 3 controls. Now, could that be 3 kings? No, because we've got 2 of them. Could it be an ace and a king? Yes. It couldn't be 2 aces because that's 4 controls. So we know precisely that partner has got an ace and a king. So it seems to me quite a useful control, but let's do another hand. Let's see if we can get something a bit better. What would you bid there?
Right.
Yes, that's right. 2 controls, the 2 kings.
But what do you do with the information?
Well, sometimes it's more help than others.
Mm.
But sometimes you can place every, it's just luck what comes up on the screen. Sometimes you can place every ace and king in the pack. So far, we haven't had a hand exactly as good as that. Let's see what we can do.
Oh.
I'm trying to get one with about 4 controls if I can, but don't get many of those. How about that one?
Mm.
1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, that's a 2 no trumps.
It is, isn't it? Now, our partner, how can we have 4 controls? Well, we could have 2 aces, or we could have 2 kings and an ace. It's pretty useful. But our second bid either way would be what? So Roy, I think it was Roy just then said quite rightly 2 no trumps. That's very encouraging, isn't it? Yeah, sometimes you can use this in conjunction. He doesn't supersede Blackwood because here we're not quite sure of the exact position. But I think we've got enough to use Blackwood now. Sorry, we'll bid 3 clubs, by the way. 2 clubs, 2 no trumps. Please, this is quite advanced. Don't worry if it's beyond you or not interested or don't like it. It says here what you should bid. See if Roy was right. Yes, he was. Don't bid 2 clubs unless you've got the minor suits. You certainly need 6 cards. So this auction will go 2 clubs, 2 no trumps. Very encouraging, that, isn't it? Then you bid your 3 clubs. Partner must carry on bidding something. Sorry, 3 diamonds, I should say, shouldn't I? We'll go over to get 2 clubs, 2 no trumps, 3 diamonds, 4 clubs, Blackwood, and I think you should be in 6 clubs quite easily. Anyway, it's up to you what you think about it, that one, and want to take it in board. I think it's rather a neat system.
Chris,
Yeah.
I don't understand why the partner bid 2 clubs in the first place. Wouldn't that be 2? Well, shouldn't there be 2 no trumps? He's got 20 points.
Good case for it, isn't there? Who's that speaking, please?
Roy.
Oh, sorry, Roy. He has, but it's not a balanced hand.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Now, I'm not saying you have to have a balanced hand because this area of bidding is awkward. I think the singleton ace and the doubleton king queen, well, it'd work here, wouldn't it? But then again, we're quite lucky with our opponent, with our partner.
Yeah.
So I think 2 clubs, 2 no trumps, which does take up quite a bit of bidding space, 3 diamonds, 4 clubs, 4 no trumps, just using ordinary Blackwood would be 5 diamonds. And I think we can have a go at 6 clubs there because it's always easy seeing both hands, isn't it?
Mm.
Okay, I think that'll do tonight. So I'll stop sharing and let you have a chat. There's something I wanted to ask you about on Tuesdays. Oh, yes, it's probably a petty thing. On Tuesday, now, I'm sorry if I sound a bit teacherish, I did notice that some people were discussing the bidding during the bidding. Do you think that should be allowed?
Well,
I know
we're learning. So what was happening?
yeah, I'm not talking about group 1 when they're on their own. That's absolutely fine. That's what it's for. Well, my view, I mean, you know, is that you shouldn't. Simple as that. But is that too hard? Well, we're a very friendly club, I can assure you, compared to most other bridge clubs I've been to, where fights nearly break out.
I know once or twice, Chris, when we were bidding or when the opponents were bidding, my partner gave the opposition the chance to change their bid because they made an obvious wrong bid.
John, isn't it? Well,
Yeah,
that's
and
very,
that was just a teaching process. He was being very generous in
yeah. I think that's the opposite of what I was saying, because that's very good of him. And I do think we need to take that in board in Group 2. You know, you notice how many Group 1s aren't here tonight. It's because they're still worried about being shown up, and one or two of them possibly think that some people have been a bit short with them about getting things wrong. Maybe it's their imagination. I think the vast majority of people here are incredibly polite, and that's great to hear that John actually, in effect, gave points away by helping people.
Yes, he did. He gave quite a few away, actually.
Well, Christopher, you've been at the club longer than I have. There's not only about Roy. What do you think, Christopher?
Well, I think if you finish, you're talking about when you finish the hand on the
Goodness
table.
me! When you finish the hand, one of the great things, you have a chat about anything.
I wouldn't do it during the bidding. I think we should all keep quiet. But at the end, if there's any little lessons to be learned on very low voice,
yes, absolutely.
we do say, well, perhaps that was the wrong bid or something like that. But it's probably better not to say it when you're bidding. Otherwise, as you say, it just undermines the whole concept of bidding.
Yeah, or fairness. Yeah. I mean, as I say, we don't want to get too serious, but the actual law is that you shouldn't be talking during the bidding or the play, except
I think the rules. Sorry, Chris.
Carry on.
I'm going to say I think the rules can be relaxed when we're playing the two groups together. But when you're playing the one group, I agree with Christopher that you don't discuss it when you're bidding, because when you're playing the other 3 weeks, you're being more serious about what you're doing.
Yeah.
And some people do cheat unintentionally, don't they, by their grimaces and so on. Yeah. I think we should, whatever you think, we should only apply this to Group 2 playing by themselves. I absolutely agree with that. Okay, so unless there's any more questions, I'll leave you to talk about
it. You mentioned last week, and that was unusual length before bidding. I've been guilty of it along with a lot of everybody else. I mean, sometimes it is really quite complicated. You're sitting there thinking, what shall I bid? And I was surprised when you said in some clubs you get penalised if you try to
that's very complex, actually. You only get what happens in a really serious club is that somebody might say they reserve their rights. Now, if you made a pause, yes, and then you passed, but then your partner sort of slightly overbid, taking account your pause, that's the illegal bit, and you have to be far better direct than me to actually be able to work that out. That's the actual rule. Anyway, we're getting on to fairly serious ground. Somebody, let's take you, Christopher, or Ron, or Caroline, or whoever. I think if I were judging that, I would say you all ought to know your first 2 opening bids automatically. Well, unless you're playing, what conventions do you play, you two?
Quite a few.
Like Jacobi, 2 no trumps, and
Jacobi, and obviously 2 no trump openers.
Splinters.
Yep, Ron and I do splinters, if we remember.
By the way, a final point about the results: only 1 slam was attempted in all of those hands. Now, I think I know the reason for this. It's because, and it's my fault, we're not using those bidding slips. People don't shuffle as well as they think they do. The hands end up flat and uninteresting. So we will trying. Sometimes we haven't really got time, I admit. Unfortunately, the one attempt at slam failed. I won't say who that was, but I think he's on the screen now, actually. So, but you know, slam should come up about every 15 hands potentially. So it does suggest the cards are perhaps need shuffling, or maybe it's just chance. We do not know. With that, ladies and gentlemen, look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Good night.
Thank you.
Right.
Good night.
That's good. Bye.
Cheerio, everybody.
Stop recording.